So thank you to coming at my session about how to extend Microsoft Teams. So first of all, just a few information about me. I'm Fabio Franzini. I'm based in Italy, and I'm a Microsoft Business Application and Office Development MVP. I'm an independent senior consultant and MCT trainer, and in this slide you can find some information to contact me, like my email, the Twitter account, or the LinkedIn account. Feel free to send me an email or contacts if you have some questions about this session or in general on development in the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So this is the agenda of this session. This session it's full of concept, and I have too many things to explain in 40 minutes, and it's very difficult, but I'm trying to explain all. And first of all, we need to have just an introduction of the Microsoft Teams as a platform. So just a few slides to introducing this new app platform and the extensibility points that Microsoft Teams have to create application or extend the Microsoft Teams client. And then I'll show you a different approach to extend Microsoft Teams. Basically, we have two approaches, the code-based approach and the low-code-based approach. In the code approach, we are able to choose from the .NET or Node.js environment, or using SPFX, the SharePoint framework, to extend the Microsoft Teams client. And then I'll show you just a simple demos for both code and SharePoint framework project. And at the end of this session, I want to show you the new approach based on the low code or the Power Platform as the Dataverse for Teams. This is a very interesting way to extend the Teams client. And yeah, I'll show you just a demo. Okay, in this slide, you can find a graph of all the extensibility points that Microsoft Teams have. For example, the basic way to extend the UI of Teams is to create a tabs. Basically, a tab it's just an embedded web content, but inside Microsoft Teams, you have the possibility to implement inside the tabs many things like the authentication, because if you need to retrieve information inside the tab, you need to be authenticated. Display task modules. You are able inside on a tab display SharePoint pages or web parts. Basically, a tab inside the Microsoft Teams client, it's an iframe that show on a web page, and then inside this iframe you are able to host the page that you want to host, of course. Another way is to create a bot. The bot is a virtual agent, and the iteration from the user and the bot, it's based on the conversation approach. So basically, you have a chat with a bot, and then the bot are able to understand the input, the text that the user put inside the chat, and it depends if the bot is intelligent or not, by using something like the cognitive services, are able to understand the natural language of the user or just simple commands. Inside a bot, the bot are able to reply to the user with the custom logic, just a simple text message, or a complex messages like an adaptive card or something like that. Inside the bot are able to communicate with a single user or inside a group chat, for example. Of course, there are many ways to implement the bot. Later, I'll explain better. But inside the bot, we need to authenticate the user, for example, and there are many ways to do that. Because the bot it's another way to create an application, and then the application, if have to call some API or external system, have to authenticate, of course. Another way is to create a messaging extension. The messaging extension, it's an extension inside the chat, the input of the chat when the user put the text to send into the chat. And in this way, we are able to create new action to enrich the message that you want to send inside a chat. For example, there are an example of messaging extension could be a way to create to tell an assistant to get, for example, the weather, and then this messaging extension are able to send an adaptive card inside a chat with the information retrieved by an external system. Another way is, again, to use the webhook and connectors. There are many ways: incoming webhook, outgoing webhook, or Office 365 connector. So basically, it's a way to send an external notification from Teams to external system, or from external system to Teams. And in this way, in this extensibility point, we have the possibility to render adaptive card inside a chat by retrieve information from external system and then write card inside a chat, or manage events inside Teams and then notify external system. Last but not least is the Microsoft Graph, because it's not an UI extensibility point of Teams, but it's the way to interact with Teams data, but in general with the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So if you want to automate the creation of Teams or read information about users or the Teams data, you need to use the Graph API. The Graph API, it's basically a REST API. You need to be authenticated to call them, but if you want to use a code approach, you can choose from using the SDK, for example, for .NET Core or for Node.js. And then your application, if this application is a tab, or bot, or messaging extension, or webhook and connectors, need to use, in almost all cases, need to use the Graph API to interact to Microsoft Teams. Just a few slides about some extensibility point of the UI of Teams. You remember the tabs? It's a way to extend the UI of Teams by add something like an application. Of course, there are two different kind of tabs. Channel tab, that you can add inside a specific channel of a Teams, or personal tab. Personal tab, it's a static tabs, and you can find in the left application bar in Teams. Of course, when you want to create a tab by using code, for example, you need to choose if you want to add a channel tab or a personal tab. Basically, you can embed every website that you want. If you already have an application, a web application, you are able to create the manifest. Later, I'll show you to add a new tab and then embed the URL of the existing application. Or if you want, you can create the new web application and then configure the manifest to host the page inside a specific tab. A bot, again, it's an application that runs inside a chat, and it's based, and this is the chat-based, of course, application. I already mentioned that inside a chat, you are able to understand the natural language of the user by using the cognitive services, for example, and the bot are able to reply with the text or complex UI by using the adaptive cards, of course. But the logic of your bot, it's depend by your own idea. So if you need to interact with an external system and then reply with the external data, you are able, and then you need to implement your own logic inside the bot. The bot inside Teams, it's based on the bot framework, and then it's just a framework that are able to host your bot, but you need to implement your logic like every application that you want to create. Again, this slide show you the messaging extension. Yeah, basically it's a way to share external information inside a conversation. Almost the messaging extension are able to send something like an adaptive card, because it's a way to show a complex UI inside a chat, and it's very, very powerful. The last one is the webhook. Again, there are two webhooks: incoming webhook or outgoing webhook. The incoming webhook are a way to automatically send notification from another app inside a Teams channel. And the outgoing webhook, it's a way to message an external service by using the mention inside a chat. And then again, Microsoft Graph for Teams. So the graph is very, very important. If you don't know Graph, you need to read all the information about Graph, because you need to use for interact with Teams, but not only Teams, all the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So now we can start with the code approach to extend Microsoft Teams. So the code approach, basically, it's based, of course, with code, and you are able to choose the platform that you want, because it's not mandatory to use .NET or Node.js. If you want to use Java or another platform, you are able to do. But of course, we need to interact to the Teams, or with so use a simple way to create application for Teams. So to do that, we can use some toolkits for Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio. Basically, are the extension for Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio that help you to create the manifest file. The manifest file, later I'll show you, it's an JSON file that contains all the information for Teams to host your application. There are two Teams toolkit. There are one Yeoman generator for Microsoft Teams officially. It's present on a Teams application named App Studio, and the demo is based on this application that are able to help you in a graphical way to create this manifest file. There are different SDK that you can use. But of course, if you need, you are able to call directly the REST endpoint if there are no SDK for your platform. But Microsoft had already created the SDK for almost all the platform present in the IT ecosystem. And then you can use the SDK for JavaScript and the SDK for .NET or Node.js. Of course, if you need to create a bot, you need to use the bot framework, and then there are implementation for .NET and Node.js. And then the same you need to use the Graph API as a REST API, or by using the SDK that Graph API have. Inside this slide, we have some references for the code approach. If you wanted to create a tab, a bot, and a messaging extension, there are a new way, new extensibility point up in Teams meeting. You are able to create an app that will be hosted inside the meeting window, okay, to interact with another people inside the context of the meeting, okay. In this docs.microsoft.com page, you can find information about that. The same for the webhooks and the connector, how to add authentication inside your application, and the last link is the GitHub repository that contains the sample application that Microsoft already created to help you to understand how to create application. But it's not a problem if you want to create a tab and a bot. You can find all the information to create application for Microsoft Teams. So let's start with a simple demo, because I have a lot of information to explain to you. And this demo, it's based to the App Studio. So basically, the App Studio, it's an application for Teams made by Microsoft. You need to install by go to Apps, search App Studio, okay, and then click on install. Of course, I already installed this application, then I'm able just to open. It's a personal application, and it's a personal tab, and you can find here inside the personal app toolbar. Here you have different kind of interface inside this application. The first one is the manifest editor. Here you are able to create from scratch the new application, the new manifest. I remember that the manifest, it's a JSON file that you can use to inform Teams about your application. You are able to validate a manifest that you already have, for example, because you are created the manifest by using the toolkit for Visual Studio Code, or you are created the manifest manually, okay. But there are different, again, different tabs inside this application. First one is the card editor, and this is the way to test the hero card, the thumbnail card, or an adaptive card that you want to send directly inside on a chat, for example. About this one, the adaptive card, it's another topic for another session. And basically, it's a JSON file that contains the information like the body, the containers control, the columns, and the UI. Basically, it's a way to describe a snippet of UI that can contain text, images, actions, and another controls. It's a JSON file, but you can test by, if you already know adaptive card, you are able to write the JSON here, or you are able to go to adaptivecards.io. And here you are able to find a designer to build by using the drag and drop your adaptive card. Then you are able to copy the payload and then come back here and paste here, and then test inside with the UI of Teams, because you are able to see that the UI of the adaptive card, it's the same of the Teams, of course your card. Or you can put into the JSON and then copy the code, the C# code or the Node.js code to copy here and then paste inside your C# or Node.js application. You are able to test your card, like click on send me, and then you can go to the chat, there are both App Studio bot, and then you are able to see the result of your adaptive card. Another tab is the UI tool, and this is just a static tab that contains some links to the Fluent UI React North Star. It's the UI toolkit that you can use. It's not mandatory, but it's better to use this toolkit if you want to have the same UI that teams have. For example, let me show you. It's the button. Okay. This is this button. It's have the same look and feel of the Teams button because Teams use this Fluent UI React North Star library. So it's not mandatory, but it's recommended to use this one when you create a tab or so an UI extension of Teams. There are another example of UI templates. You can click here and then see some templates that you can use inside your application. It's just a simple way to understand how to create form, how to create a dashboard, how to create a list or something like that. And then the last one, it's the sample application that now I show you. You are able to install this application directly by click here, install to Teams. And then, yeah, let me show you. This is the Teams sample application. Of course, you are able to download, let me show you the code. This is the project that comes from the GitHub and then contains the project. It's based on Node.js, this sample, and React, of course. And then you can download and test locally your application. This sample application, sorry. This is the same application, but installed inside Teams. And then I'm able to show you one of the tab, the personal tab that this application have, just on a simple dashboard. It's based on the previous Fluent UI library, React North Star library, and then show you just on a dashboard. But it's very powerful to see what you are able to do by write code, React code, and using this Fluent UI North Star UI library. It's very powerful. So let me come back to the App Studio because I installed the manifest of this application, and then if I click here, we are able to see all the information about this manifest. So inside the manifest, you are able to write the short name, the full name, the ID of the application, what is the package name, the version. You are able to change the version, of course, the description, the developer information, what is the application URL. At this moment, it's hosted directly by the office dev.github.io domain. Okay. You can change the UI of the icons. It's very important. And then you are able to change the capabilities. So the capability is the extendability point that you have defined inside this application, inside for Teams. Basically, we can add tabs, and you are able to select the Teams tab, the Channel tab, or Personal tab. In this case, we have only Personal tab. Okay, you are able in the same application. You are able to mesh up tabs, bots, connector, messaging extension. It's not a problem. And then by this UI, you are able to set up, for example, the information that you need to add for the bot. The same for connectors, and the same for messaging extension. At the end, the last point, it's to set the default language and the region. It's possible to add multiple language. you need to set the domain permission, okay? What is the device permission? The application ID if you wanted to implement the single sign-on, and the permission that this application need to have inside the Microsoft Graph, because of course, if you need to interact in a client way or in the backend of your application with the Microsoft Graph, you need to specify the permission that the application needed to have. At the end, you are able to see the JSON of your manifest, the preview, just the preview, and then inside the same manifest editor, you are able to install, download the zip file that contain the manifest and the icons, or directly publish inside their the tenant app catalog of Teams. So basically, this application, it's the graphical way to build the JSON manifest for a team application. It's very, very simple. Okay, let's come back to the slide. Okay, now it's time to talk about another way to create extension, so application for Microsoft Teams. This way is to use the SharePoint framework. So SharePoint framework was born to extend SharePoint. The name is clear, SharePoint framework, but Microsoft had implemented some way to use SharePoint framework to extend another service, like for example Teams. So if you already know the SharePoint framework, there are no problem. If you don't know the SharePoint framework, of course, this is just a way to create Teams. You are able to change the way, so full code web application bot or something like that, or SharePoint framework. And for me, it's the simple way using the SharePoint framework to create a personal tab or on a channel tab. So you need to start to create basically on a web part project inside by using the SharePoint framework, and then you need to add the supported hosts, add the Teams tab. This is very important because if you miss this Teams tab, you are not able to add a web part as a tab inside Teams. Another things, it's you need to change the default SharePoint framework Teams images icon. Of course, this is the sample icons. You are able to change with your own icons. And then, of course, your web part need to interact with Teams. There are two different ways. The first way is to retrieve information by using the query string inside the page that hosts, inside a tab, your web part. But the most powerful way is to use the context, because inside the SharePoint framework, we have the possibility to access to the Microsoft Teams context and then get in a synchronous way the information regarding the Teams ID, the channel ID, the locale, the theme, the entity ID, sub-entity ID, UPN, and group ID or tenant ID. So all the most powerful property, it's present inside the Microsoft Teams context. Yeah, the Microsoft Teams context was added in the version 1.8.0, and then it's the same object that you can use when you create a web application as a tab, for example, by adding the Microsoft/Teams.js npm package. It's the same context, and then you can use inside the SharePoint frame. how to use inside the SharePoint framework. Inside your web part, basically you have to write some code inside the init method, and then basically the code is this one. You are able to check if this.context.sdk.microsoft Teams it's not null, because if it's not null, it's present inside a Teams tab. Otherwise, it's not inside your web part. It's not hosted inside Teams. And then you can use this information to, of course, to check team if you are in Teams or SharePoint, or of course need have a reference to interact with the context, of course. Another thing is the SharePoint Framework web part have the possibility to be configured by using the property pane. You have the same way when you have a web part, a SharePoint Framework web part hosted as a tab in Teams. You can click on settings, and then you are able to see the property pane of the web part, and then you are able to change all the property that you can that you are inserted inside this panel, and then automatically the SharePoint Framework and Teams manage your changes and then re-render your web part. Another thing, it's very important, it's the possibility to add this can update configuration as false inside the manifest of the SharePoint Framework Teams application. And then in this way, you are able to configure the web part just in one way. So no, one time, sorry. Just when you add your web part as a tab inside a Teams channel. When you can try to change the settings, you are not able to change the settings. It's a powerful way to configure only when you have to add the application and stop. The last thing is to create the package of the application and then deploy inside the SharePoint application gallery. You need to add your application, and then you have to remember to click on Sync to Teams, because if you don't click to Sync to Teams, at this moment there are no way to inform Teams that it's present on one or more web part that could be hosted inside a tab in Teams. You need to do manually. You need to do only the first time that you publish the package, and then at this moment, you are able to, of course, install the application. I already made this one, and then I'm able to show you the SharePoint Framework Teams together. So this is the application that I added into the SharePoint app gallery. Okay, into this tenant, into my tenant. And then when you click on Sync to Teams, automatically Teams generate the manifest for Teams, and then you are able to find the application inside the Teams store. Now, if I click on the application, I'm able to click on Add to Teams, and then I need to select a specific channel to set up a tab. I'm able to post to a channel, but I don't want to do that. And then this is the web part hosted inside a channel tab. Now it's possible to change all the properties, okay? Or by click here on settings, you are able to change the same properties. So this is a sample web part. You have the manifest, remember the Teams tab, but this is the almost the same web part that you already built with the SharePoint framework, and then you can use React, you can use HTML. So you are able to use the framework that you want to build this web part. I don't have too much time, but too much thing to explain. And the last part, it's the low-code approach. So if you are an expert or not of the Power Apps or the Power Platform, you can use the same concept of Power Apps, Power Virtual Agent, and Power Automate inside Teams by using Dataverse for Teams. What is Dataverse for Teams? It's the embedded Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power Virtual Agent clients inside Teams. And then Dataverse for Teams have a subset of the Dataverse. Dataverse is an application database that you can use to create the storage of your application. By using Dataverse for Teams, you are able to create directly inside Teams a Power Apps application, for example, by defining inside the Dataverse the tables with relation or your custom columns, and then build the UI from these tables directly by using Power Apps into Teams. So some information. The security of Dataverse for Teams, it's managed by the security of the teams by using the owners, members, and guests. For each team, we have a single environment. So the environment, it's in the Power Platform. It's a way to manage tables, applications, flows, bots in Virtual Agent, and then have a black box for each teams in this case. And inside Dataverse for Teams, we have support for a large volume of record, 1 million. You can create application bot and automation inside Dataverse for Teams, and then you can use all standard connector that we have inside the Power Platform. But if you need to have more than the Dataverse for Teams things, you are able to upgrade to the standalone Power Apps, Power Automate, or Power Virtual Agent, and then use the same connectors to connect to Teams, of course. For example, if you need to use the premium connector, you are not able to use the premium connector of the Power Platform inside the Dataverse for Teams. But you can upgrade and then pay the license to use them. So this is the application that we have in general availability, the Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power Virtual Agent. Later this year, I think, will be available the Power BI. And the best thing is that this client, it's automatically, you don't need to pay to use Dataverse for Teams, because the license, it's included on the license that user have to use Teams, of course. It's very powerful because, for example, the Power Virtual Agent cost too much for me. It's very expensive. But if you need to create a bot by using the Virtual Agent inside Dataverse for Teams, you don't need to pay any license. It's completely free because it's licensed with the same license that user have for interact with Teams. So, sorry. Now it's time to the last demo. And the last demo, it's about the Dataverse for Teams. So you need to install by the app catalog an application, Power Apps, or Power Virtual Agent, or Power Automate. So when you install this application, you are able to install an application example made by Microsoft, I already installed, or create a new application. So if you need to select the teams, and then when you start to create an application, you are able to define test. You are able to define tables. Come on. Okay. for example, to do. Now, it's just a quick demo, but you can understand what is the powerful of this way. Completed, okay, as a Boolean, okay. Able to, oh, sorry, I'm able to write here, come on. Okay, session, and then complete no, test complete yes, and then close. And then I defined just a simple table to-dos with the two columns, name and completed as Boolean. And then automatically the Power Apps designer that have this simple screen binded the controls to this table. But of course, this is just on a simple application. You are able to create a lot of screens, a lot of controls by using the low-code approach. At this time, I'm able to save and then publish to Teams. Okay. At this moment, we are able to publish just as on a channel tab. And then if I click here, come on, save and close. Okay. If I come back to Teams and then go to the general, I'm able to see the test application, be that by using the same concept of the Power Apps, but at this moment inside the Dataverse for Teams by using the Dataverse as a storage of your application. No SharePoint list, but if you want, you are able to use. Just the last thing, 1 minute. This is the example of application that I already installed, manage issues. It's an application built by using the Power Apps by Microsoft. And I want to show you just to understand what kind of UI you are able to create by using Power Apps inside Dataverse for Teams. So the UI, it's very interesting. The controls are the same UI of Teams, and this is a very, very interesting way to create application as a tab inside Teams completely free by using, again, the low-code approach. So, too much thing to explain, but I'm finished. If you have some question, please, of course, tell me. I'm here for you.